Hey everyone, Sombre here. This video will be another one of my national overviews for one of the Warhammer nations in the Sombre Warhammer mod collection for Dominions 5. I'll put a link to the mod and a link to Discord where you can talk to me, give feedback about the mod, etc. in the description as usual. Today we are going to be doing an overview of Slaanesh. Slaanesh is one of the Chaos gods in Warhammer, the Ruinous Powers, the youngest of them, and Slaanesh is kind of themed around uh, temptation, sensation, pleasure, lust, but also kind of grace and art and high philosophy, high-minded things, as well as kind of desires. So yeah, very interesting, an interesting theme to go within Dominions. This overview will take a look at the nation in general, any specific mechanics it has, the recruits that it can have, the commanders that it can recruit, and then heroes, multi-heroes, any national spells that it has, further national mechanics going into a bit more detail, and then a quick look at pretender selection and some thoughts about the scales. But I'm not going to go into great detail about pretenders and scales, and I'm not going to give any guide to expansion or like what research priorities you should have or anything like that. It's really just an overview to wet your whistle and see if you're interested in maybe playing a game with Slaanesh. Like the other Warhammer nations, Slaanesh is in the Middle Era, Middle Ages, and they are named, predictably, Slaanesh, Servants of Sensation. So let's have a look at their national overview. So their national features are, well, they are a race of hardened humans, these kind of marauder Northmen humans, but there's also the tribes that live at the southern Chaos Pole as well. They have partial cold resistance. They have beasts of chaos that work for them, and they prefer cold +2 because they come from the poles for the most part, so the north and south in the Warhammer world. Their military consists of exceptional heavy infantry and cavalry, medium infantry, and very few ranged weapons. Some troops and commanders can earn promotion or damnation, and that's a mechanic that I will go into in depth when I'm talking about the national mechanics. Their magic is strong blood, astral, and air, and they have minor nature, death, and water as well. So pretty good path access, but really strongest in blood, astral, and air. They definitely are a blood nation. Their priests are average, but they are inquisitors, which means that they have double the value when preaching to remove enemy dominion, and they may perform blood sacrifice. Blood sacrifice is going to be very important for spreading your dominion around with this nation. Your dominion decreases unrest in your provinces and increases it when it's in enemy provinces. So if the enemy has taken over some territory that's within your dominion, they will find their unrest starting to creep up, and your own dominion will take down the unrest in your provinces. Your demons will weaken outside of your dominion, and you also have a few things that are dominion immortal, meaning they'll come back to life if they're killed within your dominion. Also, you need your dominion at a certain level to unlock certain recruitment. So there's unlocks of recruitment at 5 dominion and at 7 dominion, and I will show you that when I'm looking at the units, because that's what's mostly relevant to the units. They have standard forts. So I will go into the promotion mechanics when I'm looking at the things that can get promoted, which is all there's certain troops and commanders. And the first thing I will do is just go through the different recruitable units you can see in this national overview, and a few that aren't appearing here. So I'll be going through the units, then going through the commanders, then national summons, and briefly, because we'll look at them in the national spells bit. So, amongst their units, first up is the Humble Chaos Warhound. Now, this is something that appears in several of my Warhammer mods, which is if you recruit this particular unit, the Chaos Warhound, you will actually get one of several different versions. It uses what is called a monster tag in modding to turn itself into various different versions. So when you recruit this, you won't always get this version. There's a few other versions you can get. And are they available? Can I see them in the preview sites? I'll take a look. Are they in with the spawn? No. So you can't see the different ones in the preview site here. I guess I could add them, but it's not terribly important. Basically, there's a normal Chaos Warhound, which has these stats, and then there's some extra ones which are a bit stronger, which are kind of mutated Chaos Warhounds. But there's not that many different types, and they're still fundamentally all the same unit. And what is that unit? Well, it's pretty cheap to recruit. They are Gold costs 10, and then they have Chaos Recruitment 1, which means that they're discounted to 7 gold in Turmoil 3. And remember that in terms of discounts for Turmoil, it also means that you will have to pay more upkeep if you're not in Turmoil 3. If you were in Order 1, 2, 3, or 0, then you would be paying the upkeep of a 10 gold unit rather than a 7 gold unit, which you would be in Turmoil 3, or 8 gold in Turmoil 2, and so on. So, definitely something to bear in mind with all of these is to consider their Turmoil 3 costs, because you definitely will be taking Turmoil 3 scales. The Chaos Warhound is undisciplined. It has good survivals and pretty good, map move and combat movement. It's pretty quick. But because they're undisciplined, obviously they're not the best patrollers in the world, and they're not particularly good for siege defense either. Normally, a unit like this you might want to use for patrolling. I mean, they're still okay. Their patrol strength is 0.8 for a 7 gold effectively unit, so you can use them for that. But basically, what I use Chaos Warhounds for, because you can't set them to be sweeping around the flanks or attack rear because they're undisciplined, I pretty much just use them as lance catchers. You stick them at the front, they can take up heavy cavalry lance charges, things like that, and they can acquit themselves okay in combat. Later on in the game, with some buffs on them, I mean, they're still not very attractive because they've just got this one attack, the bite. The mutated versions have usually an extra attack, like a stinger tail, things like that. But yeah, they're not terribly exciting, but they're an okay chaff unit to just throw at the front to absorb some lance charges, things like that. I believe they're also, yes, they're recruitment limited, and that's just stopped the AI from recruiting loads of them. But yeah, they don't cost very much in terms of resources, and they're not very many recruitment points either. So you can just get a bunch of these when you feel like it, whenever you need, really. Then we have the Marauder Hunter that can also be recruited outside of forts. This is your pretty much your only ranged unit. You have the Marauder Hunter and the Marauder Light Horseman with javelins. So this is a javelin man basically. In Turmoil 3, he costs 12 gold, so he's a bit more expensive than the basic kind of human javelinman that you might be used to. But he's very similar to kind of human light infantry. He has a spear, he has javelins, although he has a javelin bundle rather than ordinary javelins. And all that means is that he has double the ammunition. I think javelins normally have an ammunition of 2, and he has an ammunition of 4, so they get to throw a few more of them before they run out. Their stats are actually pretty great. They have good strength, some extra hit points, not too bad morale of 11. They give you a supply bonus because they are hunters, so they will bring prey to your, hunt down and kill animals to bring food to the rest of your army. They have the cold resistance that's built into all of these Marauder type units. They also have Snow Move, which is very useful to have, and they have Wasteland Survival, so a little bit of extra survival and stuff to help them move around. Snow Move is very useful across the entire nation. All of your stuff has Snow Move. And their fighting stats are not too bad. They have Precision 11, Attack Skill 11, they have a basic defense skill of 12. That's because it would normally be a defense skill of 11 just based on their skill, but Slaanesh gives a bonus of an extra 1 defense skill to your various troops. So you will see some fairly high defense skills in this mod nation. But they don't have the best protection in the world. They only have this pretty basic armor. They have a little bit of natural protection that helps them, get that up a bit. It's kind of light medium protection, and so you should really still just treat them like light infantry. They're not bad. If you need to like throw javelins at elephants or something like that, then the Marauder Hunter is fine for that. But they are a bit more than your usual infantry, so not a terribly exciting unit, but you certainly can make use of them, I think. Then we have the Marauder, and like the Doggos, the Chaos Warhounds, when you recruit this unit, you get either a Marauder with an axe and shield, Morningstar and shield, axe and throwing axes, so there is another missile weapon there, or occasionally you get a Forsaken Marauder, and I think the Forsaken Marauder might be in one of these sites. Am I wrong about that? Yes, I am wrong about that. Maybe I'll add that. But anyway, the Forsaken Marauder is basically a Marauder with Berserk and a few more bonuses to his stats, kind of a mutated Marauder that can fight for you. All of the Marauders have in common that they are pretty decent, kind of light medium infantry. They have okay protection on them. They have relatively decent weapons that hit pretty hard because of their high strength. The axe hits at 20, the Morningstar hits pretty hard and can go around shields and so on. So the one with throwing axes can obviously hit relatively hard. I think he's got a yeah, he's got an axe. He doesn't have a hatchet. He has an axe. But the ones with the shields are more able to stand up to missile fire. The ones that have the more specialized weapons you might want to use for something slightly different. The Forsaken Marauder has 2 attacks, but doesn't have a shield. Yeah, so these guys are a pretty good mainstay. Like the Marauder Hunter, of course, they're cheaper in turmoil, so they're 12 gold in turmoil, same as the Hunter. They can make better use of these stats that they have. The better attack, defense, skill, and strength is more useful for an actual melee focused unit rather than the Hunter, and their weapons are better, and they have more protection. So, oh, in addition, they actually have a bit more morale too. Starting on morale 12 for a basic infantry is pretty great. For a lot of nations, I would say that this is an infantry they would be wanting to get a lot of, and it might even be kind of bordering on their elite infantry. They're not that different from, say, the Storm Vermin for Skaven. They don't hit as hard, but they have kind of similar elevated stats. Although the morale is better than the Skaven will ever really get to. They have these good survivals. They're pretty good map move. They have Pillager, which is situationally sometimes quite useful when you want to do kind of raid commands or pillage commands. And they're not that expensive. So normally I would say, yeah, you would be wanting to build quite a few of these. And I think that that definitely is an option for Slaanesh, particularly because they have pretty low recruitment points and resource cost. That's just taking into account that Slaanesh is kind of maybe not a sloth nation, but certainly it's a turmoil nation, so that gives it a little bit of a decrease in the resources and recruitment points available to just get infantry. But with Slaanesh, you do have a lot of other infantry options, so they're kind of your fallback that you'll just have some of. Maybe you won't be building massive armies of these or really leaning on them heavily. So moving on, we have the Marauder Berserker. The Marauder Berserker is significantly more expensive, so we've gone from 12 gold in Turmoil 3 to 18 gold in Turmoil 3. But the Marauder Berserker has better stats. It has some additional strength, more hit points, better morale, and a bit of extra magic resistance. I believe, yeah, it's slightly more natural protection as well, which makes them a bit tougher in combination with their armor. And that protection 14 is not bad, really. They're also armed quite well. 2 axes means that they can output quite a lot of fire. If you have 3 of them in a square, that's 6 attacks per square of 21 damage each. Pretty nasty and relatively accurate at attack 11. Their great strength is that they have quite a high Berserker score. Berserker 3 means that they'll end up getting +3 attack, +3 strength, and +3 natural protection, which are all things they can make a lot of use of. They do end up getting -3 defense, but their defense is already quite bad. They start off with a good basic defense skill of 12, but then, of course, they are wearing armor that encumbers them, and they're also wielding axes that are not very good for defense. They don't really care about using their defense stats to stay alive. They rely more on their protection, and once they've got berserked, their protection is significantly higher. Marauder Berserkers are pretty great. They're very killy. Going berserk is good because it gets around any morale problems you might have. They take buffs really well later in the game. They're still useful. Yeah, I use plenty of Marauder Berserkers. They can be used in expansion for sure. And anything where they are going to be able to do enough damage to consistently land strikes and get damage through armor, they're going to kill it very quickly just because they've got a lot of many attacks at high accuracy and pretty high strength. Once they've gone berserk, their strength goes up to 16 and the damage here is 24 slashing times 2. So pretty nasty. Are they worth 18 gold? They're certainly not if they just get shot up by a bunch of crossbows before they can get anywhere. That's something that does happen a bit. They've got a bit of vulnerability to missile fire, but I find them to be pretty strong and pretty frightening, which is getting into the more frightening style of chaos, which is they really can field some elite units, particularly their infantry, their melee stuff, their infantry and their cavalry. So let's move on to some more of those. So you've just seen a very killer unit. Here is a significantly less killer unit, but one that you can make pretty good use of, the Marauder Light Horseman. So these are 26 gold in Turmoil 3, so not terribly cheap for light cavalry, but not massively expensive either. They have pretty good stats, being Marauders. Their defense skill ends up being excellent because they have this great basic defense skill. They have the mounted bonus, and then they also have a shield on top of that. Just a basic shield, but still pretty good. Their protection is not so hot. They're kind of more like the hunters in terms of their protection, but it's enough that they're not going to get one-shotted very often. And once they are in melee combat, their defense skill and that shield can keep them going for quite a while. They have a light lance, which means that they can do kind of charge duties. It's not just a spear. They have javelins, so they can go and throw those. It's not the bundle of javelins, so you only get 2 ammunition instead of 4. But yeah, Light Lance and Hoof is pretty okay for dealing with things. Where the Marauder Light Horsemen struggle is they are not very good against things that have high protection. If things have high protection, if things have shields as well, then the Light Horsemen can really struggle to do enough damage to them to win the combat. But they actually have surprising staying power in melee. They're also somewhat vulnerable to being shot up in ranged combat because of their relatively low protection, although they do have a shield. What should you use Marauder Light Horsemen for? Well, you can use them to just charge in and throw javelins and be relatively reliable in melee as well. You can put them on the flanks and have them on attack rear or hold an attack rear. You can also use them for patrolling to a certain extent. They're not terrible at patrolling. They're pretty good raiders as well. They're pretty good against province defense level type units where their high defense skill can be very useful. And they're also very maneuverable. If you need to get things moving across the map quick, they have a very high map move and they have snow move and wasteland survival, so that can be pretty good for getting them around. So not a bad reaction force. It's nice to always have a few of these that you can use, sprinkle some attacking rear in battles and things like that. Slaanesh has another Marauder Horseman, and this is the one with a two-handed flail, so quite a weird unit this. They cost the same amount of gold, 26 gold. They used to cost more, but I brought their price down because I felt that they were a bit underpowered for what they were. So 26 gold, 16 resources, 14 recruitment points, as opposed to fewer resources, same recruitment points for the Light Horseman. And the Light Horseman can be recruited outside of forts, as can Marauders and Hunters. The Marauder Horseman proper, the kind of medium Marauder Horseman, does require a fort. So what are these better at? Well, they have more protection, but they don't have a shield. Their defense skill is nowhere near as good because they don't have the they have a minus to their defense from using this two-handed flail, and they have a minus from the heavier armor. They don't have the shield to back them up, but still, these are not terrible stats for melee. They're more likely to get hit, but they have the high protection. They also have very nice morale, 13 as opposed to 12, so you get a bit of extra morale from these flail-wielding maniacs. And the flail itself is really the thing that's exciting about them. It's a two-handed weapon, so they get to add more of their strength in as a bonus. So we end up doing a pretty hard hit at 18 damage. And it has a bonus against shields because it can go around them, plus it has 2 attacks. So this is a unit that outputs 3 attacks. Obviously you fit 2 of them into a square, so that's 6, which is the same as 2 attack infantry would get from a square. So 3 attacks from each of these. Against things that don't have very much armor, they will absolutely mangle them. They can be really devastating, just outputting that many attacks of decent damage. Against things with heavier armor, that's where they would struggle. So I would use the Marauder Horseman if you're expecting enemy units that rely on their shield in combat and don't have the best protection. So they can really chop up some units like that. They don't have the missile weapon, so obviously the main use for them is going to be attack rear or just to charge straight down the middle if you've got enough if you kind of got superiority and you just want to rush the enemy, then they can be useful for that. So that's the Marauder contingent, the Marauders and their charming little doggos. Now we are moving into the true Chaos Warriors, and these are really the highlight of Slaanesh, the Chaos Warriors, and then later on the Chosen. So let's have a look at the basic Chaos Warrior. So the first thing to say is that this is the first of your units that uses the promotion mechanic, and I will talk about the promotion mechanic before I talk about this unit, basically. So if you earn a certain amount of experience, this unit will get promoted. 40 experience in this case. So if you get 40 experience on a Chaos Warrior, it will get promoted at the end of the turn. When the unit is promoted, it will transform into an identical unit with Homesick 100. And as soon as that unit then ends a turn outside of its home province, it will transform into its next state and lose all experience. Now, a few things to mention here. The first thing is that the reason for this is basically I had to do some modding, kind of mod foo, in order to get it so that when they're promoted, they lose their experience. That was the crucially difficult thing to do with mod commands, but it does work. You just need to move them outside of their home province. If it comes outside of its home province and it's been promoted, it will transform into its next state. So what is the next state? Well, it is either a Forsaken, a Chaos Spawn, or a Chosen of Slaanesh. The Chosen is definitely the best outcome there. We will be looking at those later, and they're your really, really elite, sacred, heavy infantry. The Forsaken Chaos Warrior, I would say, is roughly equivalent to the Chaos Warrior in terms of how good it is. It's quite different. It has less protection and less defense, and it has more offensive firepower and a bit more morale. I think it berserks as well. We can see those in a moment. And the Chaos Spawn, I would say, is generally a bad outcome, although Chaos Spawn can still be useful. So yeah, for each of these, you have a random chance of each of those. And they're weighted so that you're not going to see most of your Chaos Warriors just turning into Chaos Spawn, but you definitely will see some Chaos Spawn, some Forsaken, and some Chosen when they're promoted. Mostly you'll end up with a good result, either Chosen or Forsaken. So let's talk about the Chaos Warrior itself before we look at what it's actually promoted into. They are discounted to 28 gold in Turmoil 3, so they cost the same as your Cavalry Boys, well, slightly more, 2 gold more. But 28 gold, for 28 gold, you get an absolutely elite heavy infantry unit. So the first thing to mention is that they have fantastic protection here. This is the equivalent of because of a little bit of natural protection and then fantastic armor. This is the equivalent of having like Ulmish troops basically in the base game. Very, very tough. The enemy is going to need to take things that are specifically designed to get around protection in order to deal with Chaos Warriors. So things that hit very hard or have armor piercing, that's what they'll be using. They also have a kite shield, which is a very effective shield on an infantry unit. And consequently, their defense is not that low despite having these big defense penalties. So yeah, including their parry skill, a defense of 13 at the end. And the kite shield also makes them significantly harder to take down with crossbows. It's a very useful defense against crossbows. In terms of their offensive output, we've got high strength, a decent weapon in the Falchion. It would be better if it were broadsword, perhaps, but the Falchion rather is a decent weapon, 8 damage built in. At good attack skill of 13, they have plenty of hit points. 15 hit points is very good for kind of a human. They are size 2, even though they're very big. They're kind of on the upper limit of size 2. They haven't quite got to the size that they're size 3 yet. Like a silverback gorilla is definitely size 3. The Bandar. They have decent magic resistance of 12, and they have superb morale. Their morale of 16 is fantastic. Basically, they are very unlikely to run away unless you're being completely crushed. They also don't cost that many resources or recruitment points considering how elite they are, so you can actually get quite a few of these guys walking around. If you've taken Sloth, you're going to struggle with that many resources, but still. Yeah, so a very strong unit with decent map move considering how heavy it is. Now, what can they turn into? Well, let's have a look. We have Slaanesh troop promotions. This shows you all the promotions starting from the bottom and going up in terms of troops. So the Chaos Warrior here can be promoted into the Chosen Warrior. It can be promoted into the Forsaken Warrior. Or, if it's turned into a spawn, it is turned into one of these spawns. So we'll look at those separately in a moment. But first, let's look at the Forsaken, and then we'll look at the other type of Chaos Warrior. So it is troop promotions. Here is the Forsaken Warrior. So as you can see, the Forsaken Warrior has significantly less protection than the Chaos Warrior. It will get hit a lot more, but you get Berserker 1, pretty good. You get 2 attacks, and one of them is armor piercing, so that's very exciting for taking down anything with high protection. And its protection is still okay. It has superb morale of 18, and its stats are okay. They are significantly decreased over the Chaos Warrior. You have less attack and defense for sure, but you still have plenty of strength. In fact, you have even more hit points with the Forsaken Warrior. And really, it's just that armor-piercing pinch that's the most interesting thing there. So I would say only very slightly worse than the Chaos Warrior as an outcome for promotion. It's disappointing because you didn't turn into a Chosen, which is the thing that's the most exciting out of these promotion options. But offensively quite potent still. So the other Chaos Warrior that you can get, rather than having a Falchion and a Kite Shield, has a Glaive. The Glaive is generally reckoned to be by Dominions players not a very good weapon because it has this -1 to attack. It does have +1 to defense and it is length 3, but it's not massively hard hitting. However, it is hard hitting enough, and it does have Pierce, that I would definitely favour these over the ones with the Falchion and the Kite Shield against anything with high protection. So if the enemy has high protection, you want to use these guys, and they can get in those hits with the Glaive instead. Other than that, it is identical. Have to bear in mind that Chaos Warrior with the glaive is more vulnerable to crossbow fire as well. So those are the Chaos Warriors. Absolute core of your army. You want to get lots of them through the promotion mechanic. Get enough XP on them. So I definitely would recommend having a lot of those guys in your armies. Next up, and moving into size 3, we have the Chaos Ogre. So Chaos Ogres are quite similar to the ogres used by the Ogre Kingdoms faction, the Goldtooth tribe. But they are a bit better. The main way that they're better is they just have a bit more protection. They have a better set of armor. The half helmet, the Chaos Ogre Gutplate's better, and I would say that their armament is slightly better than the ogres typically have as well. But they are relatively expensive. They are 35 gold each. You get a very nasty unit for that 35 gold. They are size 3, but they have good protection, good magic resistance, good morale. They're relatively quick, considering that they're heavy infantry. They hit extremely hard because of 16 strength. They have plenty of hit points. 30 hit points is plenty to be very survivable with this much protection. And their stats, attack skill 11 is good enough that they will land blows because they have 2 weapons, an axe and a falchion, both decent melee weapons. Their defense skill is not good, so they will get hit, but they're relying on their hit points and protection to get through that. So they have the typical drawbacks of ogres, which is that they are very gluttonous, but I believe they are even more gluttonous than the typical ogres because Slaanesh, of course, is very interested in indulging one's senses, and gluttony is certainly one of the sins he would be interested in. Well, I say he, she, it. Slaanesh hasn't really got a gender, or switches gender constantly. They have good survivals. They have mountain survival, snow move, cold resistance, the typical kind of stuff. And they also have a little bit of dark vision, so if you are expected to be fighting in caves and things, there's maybe a slight advantage to using Chaos Ogres. I think the real benefit of using Chaos Ogres is that you can concentrate quite a lot of gold into not a huge resource cost and not a huge recruitment point cost in particular. 13 recruitment points, 35 gold, so you're definitely going to be more likely to be choked by recruitment points and resources than more likely to be choked on the gold rather than on the recruitment points. I use Chaos Ogres quite a lot. I think that they're pretty good to mix in with Chaos Warriors and the like. Obviously, they don't fit perfectly a size 3 and a size 2, but I do use regiments of them, and they can draw fire because of their higher hit points. Can be very useful. Another size 3 bruiser that you have access to is the Chaos Troll. Chaos Troll is significantly more expensive, an additional 10 gold in Turn 3 up to 45 gold. But kind of a similar stat line in a bunch of different ways. They have this very high strength. They have tons of hit points, 37, an extra 7 over the ogres. They don't have the best protection, but they do have excellent magic resistance. And having good magic resistance and hit points can be useful for drawing spells in various circumstances. But the real important thing about the Chaos Trolls is that, so firstly, they have this Troll Vomit attack. Troll Vomit is an area effect 1 armor piercing acid attack that can wreck people's armor when they throw up on them. So this is very strong against certain enemies that are relying very heavily on their armor, like Ulmish troops, for instance. This would be fantastic against them because you hit very hard and you also throw up on them and destroy their armor. And also, trolls are, of course, notorious for their regenerative abilities. They have 15% regeneration, which is nice and strong, and they also have recuperation, so they can recover all the afflictions that they are likely to take because of their somewhat low protection. Chaos trolls are really good if you can get buffs on them that make up for that low protection and their bad defense skill. A drawback with them is that, of course, they've got a bit of gluttony because they are, ravenous Slaaneshi style beasts. And they are also undisciplined, unlike the ogres, so you can't give them orders. But they can still be very useful, I find, for dealing with things where you need to hit them very hard, and you could do with having that Troll Vomit area effect attack. If you've got the right buffs, can also be very hard to kill, but without those buffs, they're not that hard to kill, so you need to be careful with them. Then we have another Marauder cavalry unit, the Marauder Hellstrider. So the Hellstrider is a particularly kind of perverse and cruel Marauder who has got favour from Slaanesh and has been gifted with one of these, a Steed of Slaanesh, a rather phallic-looking animal with a long whippy tongue that attacks people. And the rider also has a long whip for causing lots of pain and enjoying those sensations. So we have the Steed's Tongue and the Hellscourge, the 2 weapons. The Steed's Tongue whips around, very good against shields because it can go around them. and it can't be repelled. And when it hits, it can have psychoactive poisons if it does damage. That is difficult to negate with magic resistance, and if it manages to hit you, I believe this is a confusion effect from the psychoactive poison. So you might attack your comrades or to kind of like weave around. And then this is, of course, nasty poison that you can also get there. If this manages to hit you, the psychoactive poisons, then you will also be poisoned. So if the Steed's Tongue actually manages to hit somebody and they don't have the magic resistance to pass that check, it can be pretty nasty, but it doesn't do a huge amount of damage, so it's not reliable against things with very high protection. The Hell Scourge, you get kind of a classic one-handed flail, so it's a bit like a Morning Star. You get plus attack versus shield. It is magic, which is extremely nice to have on a basic unit. And it also has, if it manages to damage, a minor life drain effect. Now, minor life drain is very useful. It allows you to recover hit points and also fatigue. So if you can get some good buffs on the Marauder Hellstriders and make them really elite, then they can be very self-sustaining in combat, getting their health back if they're managing to land hits. But even just having a magic weapon on a recruitable is very exciting, and they're not terribly expensive, the Marauder Hellstrider. They're only 45 gold each. So for that, you get a well-statted unit. If you compare them with the Marauder Light Cavalry, they have that same defense skill that they get from being good at defending themselves and having a shield in there as well. But their protection's not terribly high. They've got a bit of extra natural protection because they're riding this beastie, but overall that protection is not enough to keep a somewhat expensive cavalry alive that well. I do think that they are potentially a bit undercosted though, because if the rider dies, if you lose these 12 hit points, then you do get the Steed of Slaanesh fighting on for a bit before it runs off back to its home dimension. So possibly the Marauder Hellstrider is a little bit too strong. Been keeping an eye on that, but 45 gold is fairly expensive for something that's not that hard to kill. So we'll see. They do also come with a patrol bonus, and it's a very strong patrol bonus. So you end up with, for 45 gold, getting a unit which patrols at patrol strength 5. So that's a good deal for a patroller. So you will be wanting to get some of these for patrolling most likely. They do require quite a few recruitment points compared to the other units. Their resource cost is not that high though. And they do require a friendly Dominion strength of 5 in the province to recruit. You can't recruit them in provinces that don't have very much Dominion. So getting up to 5 can be a bit of a challenge. But yeah, I would say that they are a very strong medium cavalry. Oh, they're also extremely fast, I should say. That combat speed is absolutely wild. So if you put them on attacking rear, you can really rocket round the sides of things. It can be very impressive. And once the enemy starts running away, they're really terrifying. They're very good at killing fleeing units. Very effective at that. So yeah, possibly undercosted. Definitely, if anyone thinks that they're super undercosted, give me some feedback on those. They also can't get promoted, of course, which is different from the Chaos Warriors. So before I talk about the Chosen, I'm going to talk about the Chaos Knight. The Chaos Knight is basically a mounted Chaos Warrior, and heavy cavalry is already very strong in Dominions, and if you combine the concept of heavy cavalry with the concept of the Chaos Warrior, these absolutely elite infantry with very heavy armor, you get a very, very scary unit indeed. They cost 70 gold though, significant cost, but very good defense skill, tons of protection, great hit point, strength, attack skill, etc. Just like the others. They come with a full-on lance, not just the light lance, so they can do absolutely devastating charges. They have the Warhorse Oof attack because they have these Chaos Steeds that are particularly nasty, so very high damage hoof attack. And they have the same Falchion for chopping away in close combat. Very, very hard to kill and very destructive. Still, like most knights, more destructive on the charge than anything else, and they are very expensive. Bear in mind that it's just a 15 hit point still, so if somebody's just blasting you with like fireballs or something like that, it is possible you will lose a lot of gold in a hurry there. So, a bit of caution with Chaos Knights. Now, they can also get promoted, just like the Chaos Warrior. Their promotion is still 40 experience, and just like with the Chaos Warrior, you get the same thing. They transform into an identical unit, homesick to 100, and then as soon as it ends a turn outside its home province, it transforms into its next state. But for the Chaos Knight, their next state is either to be a chosen knight, which is like a chosen but mounted on a horse, A Forsaken, which is definitely a downgrade in this case, because while the Forsaken is kind of similar-ish, maybe slightly worse than a Chaos Warrior, it is definitely worse than a Chaos Knight. Or turned into a Chaos Spawn, which we will look at in a moment. I do find that they are easier to get promoted. It's easier to build up the experience on these guys than it is on the Chaos Warriors, of course, just because a heavy cavalry of that nature is more likely to survive and more likely to get more kills. So what are these Chosen like? Well, the Chosen can only be recruited in the capital. They are sacred. They are your very scary sacred that people have used to great effect in several games already, and I've already increased their gold cost quite a bit. They cost 60 gold, which is a lot for a sacred infantry, but believe me, they are very frightening. They cost 25 resources and 16 recruitment points. They are basically, the best way to think of the Chosen Warrior is that it is like the Chaos Warrior with the Falchion and the Kite Shield. You can see it's the same equipment, Falchion, Kite Shield, same awesome heavy armor, except they also have recuperation, which means they can recover from those pesky afflictions that can be bad on such a strong unit. And obviously, this set of high protection, high hit points, etc., very high morale, is an excellent platform for putting a bless on. So they can become really, really, truly strong with the bless on. They also do have better stats than the Chaos Warrior. This is a +1 strength, +1 attack skill, +1 defense skill at least, I believe. And they're still relatively quick for such heavy infantry. So these guys can stand at the front of a line. They can stand in combat. They can survive for a super long time, particularly if you've put a bunch of, resistances and defensive skills on. And they can just each round chop something with that falchion. Now, the place where these can have difficulty is that although 22 is a good damage output and this is a very accurate attack, if you're up against very high protection things and things that are very difficult, maybe they're going to be taking some hits on their shields, you may want to have taken something in your bless to increase the damage output from that. And they do only get that one attack per round, so while they are still size 2, they are not yet at size 3, and so you can fit 3 of them into a square. That is still just 3 attacks per round for such an expensive unit. That may be a bit of a problem. Once you have reached the rank of Chosen as a troop, you can't get promoted again. They don't at any point turn into Spawn or Forsaken or anything like that, or turn into anything stronger. This is their pinnacle, and it is very strong indeed. Stronger still is the Chosen Knight. The Chosen Knight can also only be recruited in the capital, and is to the Chosen Warrior what the Chaos Knight is to the Chaos Warrior. So same stats, same excellent armor, same sacred status, same recuperation. All of the things that are excellent about the Chosen Warrior are also excellent about the Chosen Knight, except the Chosen Knight also has all of the benefits of being mounted, and mounted on a very nice steed indeed. So they are much faster. They have much less encumbrance because they don't get the encumbrance from their armor. They have much, much better defensive skill, which works very well with their kite shields. They are truly difficult to take down in combat. They have the lance, which gets over the fact that you may have a little bit of difficulty dealing enough damage to kill very high protection enemies, because they can just blast them with the lance. They are more likely to land that falchion hit because the warhorse who fires off first, and this is also a pretty good attack. Attack 12, damage 15. Bludgeoning is pretty decent. They are expensive though. They are 110 gold, which is nearly twice as much as the Chosen Warrior, and they cost significantly more resources and recruitment points. So, which would you like to use? Depends somewhat on your bless, depends somewhat on what you're trying to do. I would say that generally people would use the Chosen Warriors instead of the Chosen Knights. I actually would say that what you might want to do is build a bunch of Chaos Knights and try to get them promoted into Chosen Knights, and then once they are Chosen Knights, you can do some really devastating stuff with them. But being nearly twice as expensive means that I disfavor them somewhat over the Chosen Warrior. Still very good though. So we've made reference to these promoted units turning into, Forsaken sometimes, but also they can turn into, of course, the Chosen, which is the ideal situation for these when they get promoted. But of course, they can also turn into a Chaos Spawn. So let's have a quick look at the Chaos Spawn. I'm not going to go into great detail about these Chaos Spawn, but because they do share like a bunch of things in common. But basically, you have a bunch of them at size 3, you have some at size 4, then you have some truly large ones. The largest is at size 5. And generally, the bigger, the nastier for the Chaos Spawn. You get them basically at random, although stronger things that fail their promotion will be more likely to turn into stronger spawn. So let's start off by looking at this basic lesser chaos spawn. Here is a mess of eyes, tentacles, and pincers. Like the Forsaken, they have the pincer claw, which is armor piercing, which is a pretty constant thing amongst the chaos spawn. Another thing that's relatively constant amongst them is that they have multiple attacks, so lots of attacks. But while they do have multiple attacks, they do not have great stats. They are undisciplined, and crucially, they are mindless. So you're going to need magical leaders to move these around. You're going to have to bear in mind that when your troops who were previously, had minds, had souls, etc., when they are failing their promotions and getting turned into lesser chaos spawn, you now have these mindless troops. They can't be mixed in with the other stuff. They have to be out separately, and you need magical commanders to lead them around. I believe. I think that's true. Possibly it's not, but anyway, mindless things can't be mixed with things that have minds. They have high strength, and they have decent hit points, but they don't have great protection. They do have pretty good magic resistance. They do tend to die a lot because of low defense skill and low protection, so and their combat speed is fairly fast. They'll run ahead, being undisciplined of your other troops. They'll run into combat and they'll get killed. But if you can keep them back a bit, so they arrive at roughly the same time as your front line of troops, the fact they have multiple attacks and they have these armor piercing attacks at very high strength, 17 damage armor piercing attack is very frightening to high protection things. Even like some thugs and single combatants that are very dangerous are worried about that. They can be very useful. So I'm just going to now click through all the different chaos spawn, and you can see all the different types you can turn into. So here's another size 3 one. This one has 2 pincer claws and a whip tongue, just like the Steed of Slaanesh. This one has just the 1 pincer claw, but a bunch of tentacle attacks. This one has 2 pincer claws, and increased magic resistance. This one has 2 pincer claws, a poisonous whip tongue, and small tentacles. So this is basically the best size 3 one you can turn into. It's got a huge amount of horrible attacks that it can output. Slightly different form for this one. 2 pincer claws, small tentacles, and or I guess because they're so sensuously disgusting because of their horrible snake body and their flailing tentacle head. Then we have this one very mutated. This one's the most unusual out of them because it comes with some spit attacks. So it launches some spit attacks out of this kind of hole that it used to be a head, kind of a funnel for spitting horrible stuff. Seemed to be a little bit. Well, I guess because they're undisciplined, you can't really order them to do anything different, but you'll just have to rely on the fact that they do sometimes spit. They'll just choose to do that, being undisciplined. Moving up into the size 4 one, so significantly more hit points and strength, significantly more dangerous, and they now come with fear. We have this Greater Chaos Spawn, 2 pincer attacks and a whip tongue, 22 damage armor piercing attacks, 2 of them very nasty. We have this Greater Chaos Spawn, who has a bit more protection because he's got a helmet. It's kind of jammed on the top there. And he's got a magical attack, the Bone Blade, as well as a Pincer Claw, and a Tail Sweep, which is an air effect attack that defense negates. And then finally we have the very largest of the Chaos Spawn, the Greater Chaos Spawn here, who also has pretty high protection, tons of hit points, and fear. So big monstrous bag of hit points and fear there, and very hard hits, although again still very inaccurate attacks. So you can see that some of those Chaos Spawn you'd be fairly happy to get from maybe a Chaos Warrior getting promoted. If he's promoted into, say, this Chaos Spawn here, you'd be pretty happy with that. Or if he's promoted to one of the big ones, obviously. Some of them you'd be much less happy if he got promoted into, this Spitter boy here. Maybe that wouldn't be very good. Or if it was something like a Chaos Knight got promoted into one of these less strong basic Chaos Spawn. So that is all of your recruitable units. Let's have a quick look at your summon units, and we will go into these in more detail when we're actually looking at the national spells. But you have the Demonettes, who are your basic infantry demons. You have the Seekers, who are Demonettes mounted on Steeds of Slaanesh and your kind of super cavalry. You have Fiends, your size 3 big cavalry-esque monstrous demons. And then you have your commanders that we'll look at when we're talking about commanders. Oh, and I've just realised I forgot to say how much gem income that you have for your nation. I normally cover that when I'm talking about the nation, but since I missed that, the Palace of Pleasure Screens, which is your single starting site, gives you 2 astral, 1 air, and 4 blood slaves per turn. It also enables the recruitment of the 2 capital only troops and the 2 capital only commanders that you can get. Let's talk commanders then. So we have the Marauder Scout, very basic scout, somewhat expensive if he goes outside of Turmoil 3. That's something to bear in mind. He's 25 gold in Turmoil 3, but if you have him hanging out in enemy territory and they're an Order nation, as many of your enemies probably will be, then he will cost 40 upkeep. Well, he'll have the upkeep of a 40 gold commander, so something to bear in mind. But other than that, he is a basic scout, but he can be recruited outside of forts as well, so you're never going to have a shortage of scouts, and that's obviously quite a strength. Then we have your basic commander, which is the Marauder Chieftain, can also be recruited outside of forts, which can be useful. He has leadership 60, so no morale bonus, and can lead 2 squads. He's pretty well statted, like all of my Warhammer military commanders that don't have magic, things like that. He has a bit of increased unsurroundability and a bit of extra magic resistance and hit points and things. So somewhat tough, but not really thug material or anything like that. He does come with the Pillager ability, which means he can do the raid command, which is potentially something you could use as a bit of an advanced tactic, but you could use it. Crucial abilities that he has on him, though, he has Tax Collector, which helps him collect gold from any province that he's in that it's not connected to a fort, so he can do that by going off and raiding. He can raid, deep raid and still get you income. And he is sailing. He can bring various things with him. He can't bring size 3 things, so he can't bring ogres, he can't bring cavalry because they can't use them on the chaos long ships that the particular Marauder Chieftains use. They cannot bring cavalry on those ships, so he has sailing. That's what he's for. 45 gold in Turmoil 3. If you want the sailing to move around, then use one of these. Otherwise, maybe you would have one in an army that was doing deep raiding just for the tax collector ability, but I'm not sure that would be worth it. There is also a mounted version of the Marauder Chieftain called the Marauder Horsemaster, can also be recruited outside of forts. Doesn't have sailing, but does have better map moves, so he can lead around your groups of cavalry. That's really all I have to say about that one. Now we are moving into the interesting commander as a commander with a promotion mechanic, the Aspiring Champion, which cannot be recruited outside of forts. So the Aspiring Champion has promotion. If he gets to 40 experience, same as the troops, then he will be promoted. He will transform into a form, which will then be further transformed by an event, either becoming an exalted hero and losing all of its experience, or being turned into a mindless chaos spawn, which is not a commander. So basically, this commander, if he has a bad promotion outcome, will die, and you will get a chaos spawn troop. Although you are more likely to get the better chaos spawn, generally speaking, it's not something that you want to happen, because you definitely want him to turn into an exalted hero, which is a much stronger version of this commander. So these are only 1 recruitment point, so you can recruit 2 of them out of a fort that has 2 CP each turn, and they are not leaders of very many troops at all. They have leadership 20. However, they do have a squad morale bonus of +1. They can lead up to 3 squads. It's just the number of troops they can lead is very low because these guys are, in the lore, leading around very small war bands to try and prove themselves in personal combat. They're not leading big armies at this point. Very good stats, very similar to like a pumped up Chaos Warrior. Unsurroundable 2, very high protection, of course, because of their excellent armor. They've got 2 falchions built in, so 2 attacks, good for killing things, building up XP. What I would do with these guys is you have them lead a small number of Chaos Warriors or other troops, and you have them attack as safely as you can, not sending them right to the front and charging ahead of everyone, but you have them involved in the melee so that they can get some kills, add to your offensive firepower, justify their gold cost, of course, because they are 75 gold for a completely mundane commander, so you do want them out there doing something. And they're not, they're not amazing at leading troops or anything. And you want them out there getting the experience so that they get promoted. The crucial thing is to get these just for the purposes of getting them promoted. When they are promoted, you end up with one of these, an Exalted Hero, which I will cover now. I'm going to skip past the mages and just talk about the Exalted Hero, and then talk about promotion a bit, and then go back and talk about the rest of the mages. So, the Exalted Hero can only be recruited in the capital, though you can get them from promotions from aspiring champions. What is there to say about the Exalted Hero? Well, they are going up to size 3 now, not size 2, so they don't fit in quite as well with the formations of Chosen Warriors and Chaos Warriors because they're so big. Like the Chosen, they are sacred, which is very important, obviously, for something that you want to be thugging with. They have thugging just means like taking them as a single combatant that can do a lot of the heavy lifting on their own, maybe even going off as their own and being their one-man army. They have recuperation, just like the sacreds. They have bad formation fighter because they don't like sharing a square with other people because they kind of fight in a dancing style. That's not going to come up a huge amount, but it does mean that they are a bit more vulnerable to being hit because they don't have other people around them taking the hits. This works slightly bugly in Dominions, but for the most part, it just means they're less likely to have other people in the square with them. They can be promoted, although their promotion takes 50 XP, 10 more than the Warriors and the Aspiring Champions promotion does. Really good stats. So hit points 35. We're moving into lots of hit points territory now. Of course, excellent protection, superb morale, magic resistance. They have the much larger amount. They have a normal good leader, so 80 normal units. They can also lead undead and demons, of course, because you have your demons. And they have a squad morale bonus +1 up to 3 squads. So these guys actually are decent leaders of fairly large forces, and I would use them as such. They do cost 2 recruitment points. They require a Dominion strength of 7 in the province to recruit, which is the same as the Chosen Knights. So this can be an issue if you want them early on. That's not going to happen. You need to build up your Dominion. You can use a prophetized person preaching and blood sacrifice to push that Dominion up quickly, though. It doesn't take you that long to get a high Dominion strength. The Chosen Warrior requires Dominion strength of only 5, which is the same as the Marauder Hellstrider. But yes, 7 is the requirement for the Chosen Knight and the Exalted Hero. So early on, you're probably not going to have many of these, but you can get them, of course, through the promotion of Aspiring Champions. This is really what you want by getting the Aspiring Champions. Excellent stats, perfectly capable of thugging, very tough. Stick a couple of items on them, very good. Bear in mind when putting items on them, though, that when these guys get promoted, they will either become a Chaos Lord and lose all of their experience, which is fine, or they will be turned into a mindless Chaos Spawn, which means they die. Any items they have you will lose because they die, and you will get a Chaos Spawn troop instead, not a commander. They are quite expensive. They are 160 gold in Turmoil 3, which for a mundane commander is like eye-wateringly expensive Dominions. You would normally definitely be expecting like a mage for that kind of cost. However, you do get to skip the aspiring champion phase of the kind of promotion trail, and the promotion trail is very important for a reason that I will show you now. So I would say for these guys, you get maybe some of them when you can, mainly thinking about the promotion track, but using them as a thug, maybe being a bit careful with the items. Even if they get turned into Chaos Lords don't have foot slots, so be very careful putting a foot, a boot item, an item in the foot slot on these guys, like Boots of Stone or something like that. You can put a cheap one on them, and if you lose it, it's not that important. But yeah, bear in mind when they get promoted, that foot slot's gone no matter what. So, what do they get promoted into? Well, we look in the commander promotions. We start off with the aspiring champion. We move to the exalted hero. Oh, when things are ready to be promoted, they have this little icon appears above them. See here, the icon of Slaanesh, just to help you pick out which ones are going to be transformed by a promotion event or going to be transformed because they were homesick and they're they've moved out of the province and they're going to be transformed. So that just tells you that the promotion is incoming. So we go Aspiring Champion gets promoted to Exalted Hero, gets promoted to Chaos Lord. The Chaos Lord is a really great leader, 120 +2 for up to 4 squads. They have fantastic stats. So we've got Unsurroundable 4, we've got Sacred, the excellent stats that you would expect such an elite unit to have, and they are now mounted on a Mount of Slaanesh. The Mount of Slaanesh gives them better map move, combat speed, very fast combat speed, makes them a bit more survivable now because they're mounted. With all of their excellent stats, defense skills now up to 20, including their kite shield, and protections up to 23 because of their increased natural protection from riding on this big beast. They are size 5 now, but remember that the Exalted Hero also wasn't a fan of things standing in the same square as him, so that's not that important. And 45 hit points. Plus, if they get killed, the Mount will fight on for a while afterwards. And the Mount gives them this extra attack here, the Steed's Tongue, which is the same as you would get on the Steeds of Slaanesh on the Hellstrider unit, and on the Demonette Seeker. They also have this long sword here, which is a pretty decent weapon, but it's not magic. You definitely might want to throw some items on the Chaos Lord. They are absolutely great thugs, absolutely great leader units. You can't recruit them, but their gold cost in Turmoil 3 is listed here for the purposes of working out upkeep and things, and it's 300 outside of any Turmoil scales, but at Turmoil 1, 2, and 3 it gets discounted, and at Turmoil 3 it's discounted to 210 gold. Now, they also can be promoted. Their promotion is much more expensive, so we've gone from 40 for the Aspiring Champion of Chaos Warriors, 50 for the Exalted Hero, and now we're up to 70, so significant amount of experience you need to gain on the Chaos Lord. The reason for that is that their promotion is the most exciting out of all of them. Their promotion involves them either finally becoming a Demon Prince and losing all their XP, or being turned into a mindless Chaos Spawn. You're not very likely to be turned into a Chaos Spawn at this point, but it does happen, and it can be very disappointing to lose your favourite Chaos Lord by them being turned into a Chaos Spawn, but you can just make sure to take that Chaos Spawn and have them go off and rampage in another army. It's kind of my way of looking at it. But you can become a Demon Prince. And the Demon Prince is what it's all about. This whole promotion ends in the Demon Prince, this line of promotions, and this is the unit that you really want. So let's take a look at him. Oh, I forgot to mention the Chaos Lord has Awe, which of course is very helpful in keeping him alive. But so does the Demon Prince. And the Demon Prince has 1 point better of Awe. It also has a slew of abilities. So, Demon Princes are demons. All demons have in common that they have some level of invulnerability. So he has invulnerability 14. So if we look at his mundane protection, again, mundane attack protection 25. Very strong indeed, very, very tough. Doesn't really even need any armor items, but you certainly could give them to him. He has built-in fear, he has built-in awe. That is an excellent combo, especially awe 2. But yeah, built-in fear, very good for using him as a single combatant. He now has poison resistance. Doesn't eat. None of the warriors need to eat. None of the warriors or champions. Typical movements and things. He is a demon, of course. He now has a disease resistance being a demon. He is a combat caster, which means that he is more able to cast spells and not be distracted when fighting in close combat. I think you're also less likely to be interrupted by being hit by an arrow. And he is Dominion Immortal. Dominion Immortal, it's got quite a long reform time, but it means if he dies within positive Dominion, then 6 months later he'll just reappear again. So if you use these guys in positive Dominion, then they're absolutely fantastic. They're all strong enough without any items to do a lot of stuff just on their own. And being Dominion Immortal, you don't have to worry about losing them if they're in your Dominion. Now, what else does he come with? Well, he has superb stats, obviously. 55 hit points. We're really in quite a chunk of hit points now. Possibly I could put that up even more given the size of him. He is size 5, but 55. Well, we'll see. Maybe people will comment that it feels a little bit low for something so big. I'm not sure. Excellent stats, of course, and then he has 3 weapons. The Unholy Sword, which is a magical weapon. Very nasty, very hard hitting, good at hitting enemy sacreds, but that's less important than the fact it's just a powerful unholy weapon. He has a falchion. And he has the Wicked Claw attack, and this is the demon version of the Wicked Claw attack. So we've got an armor-piercing attack, but it's also magic. So magic armor-piercing attack that hits for 22 damage is a very exciting thing to have for free. He also has 2 hand slots. This is these 2 hands here, and he'll keep the Wicked Claw no matter what. So if you give him 2 firebrands or something, it would replace these 2 swords, but he'd get to keep the Wicked Claw. He's relatively quick, not particularly, but fast enough, slithering around on his 70 body. And apart from that, he's got all the slots except he doesn't have the foot slot. Magic-wise, you get Priest level 2, which is good because you can bless yourself, which is something that the Chaos Lord and the Exalted Hero cannot do. They are sacred, but not able to bless themselves because they're not priests. So the Demon Prince can bless himself, which is useful. He has Blood level 2. Which is nice. There's a few things that you might want to be casting with that, but it's kind of less of a thing for Demon Prince. But the ability to have Blood and Air and Blood and Astral is also good for Send Horrors and Summon Storm Demons. Those are things you can do with those cross paths. But more importantly, he is Air Mage level 2 and Astral Mage level 2. Given that he is Dominion Immortal, you've got somebody now who can magic move around, obviously, using Air Mage 2. He can Cloud Trapeze. He can magic duel people, and if he dies, well, he's immortal, so he'll come back in 6 months. It's a bit of a delay, but it's fine if he gets magic dueled or if you use him to magic duel somebody. There's lots and lots of really great buffs. You've got Mist Form, you've got Body Ethereal, you've got Luck, all of these things that you can cast with these. This is a great set of magic for such a tough unit. So a very, very flexible, very strong commander. Definitely capable of just teleporting around and blasting things. Capable of teleporting on top of enemy single combatants and going after them. Doesn't require much equipment to be strong in the first place. Yeah, just very, very strong unit in general. So this is what you're aiming to get at the Demon Princes. Every aspiring champion that you recruit could potentially one day turn into a Demon Prince. So if you did have an absolute factory of aspiring champions and they were all getting experience, they were turning into exalted heroes who were all getting experience, the same for the Chaos Lords, you would eventually end up with a lot of Demon Princes just via this method, but the attrition would be very high, I have to think. And, that's what Chaos is all about. I think this is a very thematic set of options. So those are the commanders that can get promoted. We also have the Mage Corps to look at. So let's start off by looking at Rorder Shaman. This is kind of your basic mage. He is sacred. He costs 90 gold only in Turmoil 3, which is not unreasonable for these paths. Water, Astral, Death 1. Astral 1 is obviously very useful. Astral Nature can be very useful. Water 1 can be useful for doing Frozen Hearts later on. Lots of stuff you can do with those paths. You can communion them up if you want to. They're not amazing researchers, but they are, sacred and cheap, so you probably will get a fair number of them. And they don't require a lab to recruit, just a temple and a fort. So if you fought in Temple of Province, you don't need to put up a lab. You can just be pumping these out. They won't be able to research the turn they come out, but if they can then move to somewhere else and research, you could have one fort just making these for the purposes of, pumping up your research and just having plenty of Marauder Shamans to go around, site search, do the things they can do with their paths. So a very, very nice utility mage, and one of your better researchers in terms of cost efficiency, gold to research points. Then we have two flavors of Slaanesh Cultist. These units are identical except one is male and one is female. In Dominions, when you have the Seduction command, it's a very binary thing. It's a shame, really. I wish it weren't like this, but it's basically, the male gendered unit can seduce female gendered monsters, and the female gendered one can seduce male gendered monsters. So, if, for instance, you're trying to get enemy mages and you know that your enemy mages are like if it's Tylea that you're fighting, one of their best mages is female, so maybe you would want to make a bunch of male cultists and send them to try and seduce one of those female mages. If you were fighting the Empire, maybe you'd be trying to get some of their male mages, their college wizards, so you would make the female Slaanesh cultists and send them off. And I've kind of given the game away as to what one of their main things there is, which is to go off into enemy territory using the fact that they are using the fact that they are stealthy. And off they go sneaking around. They've got spy, so you want them kind of traversing in enemy territory anyway. That gives them the Instill Uprising command as well, which is nice. You can push up the unrest in enemy provinces. They can really be a nuisance. You send them off to the enemy lands. And they can do a bit of everything. They are Inquisitors. You can send them into enemy dominion or at the edges of your dominion to preach down the enemy dominion. They are Priest level 1, so they will be Inquisiting at Priest level 2 when they preach in enemy dominion. They have spy, as I said, so they can see more stuff than usual in the enemy provinces. You could send them to go and get mundane score graphs, and I think because they're mages and they're also priests, they can get the Dominion score graphs and the magic score graphs as well if you send them into an enemy capital to do that. So they're pretty strong for that purpose. Of course, they are also being Blood Mage level 1 and not being terribly expensive, 100 gold in Turmoil 3. You would be using these as your Blood Hunters. They're not amazing as Blood Hunters, 100 Sacred Blood 1, but it's certainly good enough to power an entire Blood economy, so you can get Slaanesh Cultists for that purpose. They are philosophers. They benefit from having sloth scales. Now, you don't necessarily have to take like sloth 3. That may not be a good idea with Slaanesh, but if you did, you would end up with these being your main researchers for sure. They end up with they've got 7 research ability. If we compare them with the Marauder Shaman, also 7. So if you have neutral Order and Sloth, then the Marauder Shaman is the better gold efficient researcher out of the two of these. If you have some sloth, then they are the more efficient researcher, so you would be using them for your research purposes. The downside is that they can do a lot of stuff, even though they're quite cheap for what they can do, all these different things. They'll only be doing one of them at once, so they suffer a bit from the being more expensive in order to be a jack of all trades sort of thing. But if you take a bunch of them and you manage to get some good seductions in and steal some key enemy commanders, they can definitely pay for themselves. I think just pushing Dominion and pushing enemy Dominion down is a very strong thing that they can be doing for you. So really a cornerstone of the nation. You want to have tons of Slaanesh cultists charging around, doing your blood economy, just doing a bit of everything for you, really. And if you don't know what to do in the given moment, you shouldn't. You should know what you're doing. You should be doing blood economy probably, or going and seducing people. But if you don't know what you're doing with them any moments, they can just be researching. So they're always kind of useful for that. Or they can go and be building your labs for you, building your temples for you, and so on. So now moving on into your mainline mages, we have the Slaaneshi Sorcerer and the Slaaneshi Sorcerer Lord. The Sorcerer is your main mage, your main battle mage for sure, possibly your main researcher. They do have very good research at 13. They are sacred. So 200 gold for all of this. Pretty well costed. I say well costed, I feel like generously costed. 200 gold is not very much for such a strong mage. You have one air, one astral, one blood, holy 2, and then you have a 100% chance of air, astral, blood. So the blood 2 ones, send them off to do blood rituals, blood hunting, possibly, although maybe you'd want to be using your cultists with dowsing rods for that. Astral 2, obviously, you're kind of communing out, doing mind burns, things like that, astral magic. Air 2, lightning bolts, etc. Again, being in communions with other more powerful air mages. They also come with Inquisitor, and they are also stealthy. So having all of these mages here be stealthy is fantastic. You can sneak them out of bad situations. You can move them with stealthy forces, although you don't have very many stealthy troops. In fact, do you have any stealthy troops? I don't think you do. No, the hunters aren't stealthy. So you're not going to be building stealthy armies with them very often, but they can act just on their own to be doing some stealthy stuff. You could sneak them around and summon up air elementals, possibly, to knock out province defense. There's quite a few things you can do with them. It makes them more versatile. They are also quite capable of preaching down enemy dominion, because Inquisitor and level 2 priest means you preach at level 4 against enemy dominion, so they can very quickly preach it down. And they are philosophers, philosopher +1, so if they were in sloth 3 they would be at 16 research instead of 13. I definitely would say, so they're not more gold efficient in terms of research than the cultists, who would give you in sloth, let's say in sloth 3 you get 10 here, and you get for 100, and then for double the cost you get 16, so definitely less efficient in sloth for research, and less efficient outside of sloth as well than the Slaaneshi cultists. But you can use them for research, bearing in mind that they'll also be just very useful mages in general. Yeah, pretty good stats for a mage, a little bit more hit points than usual, a little bit more able to survive in combat, although you wouldn't really want to risk them there. A pretty strong mage overall. Moving on to the souped up version of this, we have the Slaaneshi Sorcerer Lord. This can only be recruited in the capital, and we're at 4 recruitment points now. It's the classic slow to recruit, stronger version of the mage. Slaaneshi Sorcerer Lords are everything that a Slaaneshi Sorcerer is, but ramped up even more. So we've got the research is pushed some more. They're still Philosopher 1s because of their high gold cost, 400, 280 in Turmoil 3. You wouldn't really be wanting them for the core of your researchers, but they come with Air Mage level 2, Astral 2, Blood 1, Holy 2 again. This doesn't go up to Holy 3 anywhere in your forces. So I think your Greater Demons, which we'll cover in a bit, are Holy 3. And then random magic, it's the exact same paths. So basically, they're no better as blood mages than the sorcerers, but they're your access to Astral 3 and your access to Air 3. So you will be wanting to recruit enough of these to make sure that you've got an Astral 3 and an Air 3 at least, probably several. Yeah, very strong. Overall, the Slaaneshi magic is quite blood focused, but yeah, Air and Astral, pretty good at it, pretty strong at it, and relatively cheap mages for what they're capable of doing. The fact that they're stealthy is nice. The fact that they move nicely, they're not old. They've got quite a lot of useful abilities that keep them useful. But they are a little bit jack of all tradesy. That is a bit of an issue with their mages. They're not super specialized, and so you're paying, not terribly expensive, but certainly not like really gold efficient. That's all your recruitable commanders. You also then have your summonable commanders, and I'll talk about those more in the national summons, but let's click on them quickly. You have the Herald of Slaanesh, which is your basic general of demons. You have the Demon Prince, which we've talked about already, but you can also summon up Demon Princes. And you have the Keeper of Secrets, your greater demon, your absolute centerpiece show unit, your most luxury of all your commanders. And there's your Holy Three, so that you can use them to go and get thrones and the like. But we'll talk about those in the national spells. First, let's talk about heroes and multi-heroes. So, multi-heroes, these are dependent on the luck scale. We have a Chaos Lord. So it can be very nice to get one of these. You don't have to go through the whole promotion rigmarole to get to them. Start off from a Chaos Lord, from a multi-hero, and then of course if they get promoted you can get a Demon Prince, which is more exciting by far. Slaaneshi Sorcerer Lord, this is a kind of classic thing I do where I'll give you your best mage as multi-hero. And you can also get the Herald of Slaanesh. Now the Herald of Slaanesh, let's talk about it a little bit now actually. Comes with 2 Wicked Claws. They are the magic versions. They are armor piercing, very frightening indeed. It doesn't have any hand slots, but if you put some other items on there to up that protection, then it can definitely be a thug, a single combatant. It has invulnerability 14, so don't worry too much about the slow protection unless the enemy is using magic, in which case definitely worry about it. And it will transform into a form capable of seducing either males or females. So what that means is that when the multi-hero comes, you will, I think it's the following turn, or it might be that turn, it will turn into either a male version or a female version, depending on what it has been tasked by Slaanesh at random to be seducing in the world, and you will know which version it is, male or female, because of course seduction only works on the opposite gender. That's just how it works in Dominions. Like all demons, the Herald of Slaanesh, I believe, gets weaker outside the dominion of their god, yes. So this is the version inside your dominion, and then there is another version with lowered stats outside the dominion. And the stat lowering is fairly severe. It's lots of stats, hit points, all of their like core stats. Their ore would decrease, their invulnerability would decrease, so they're significantly weaker outside of their dominion. But they can go outside of your dominion and go off seducing people. They are better at seducing than the Slaaneshi cultists. They are, again, spies. They are stealthy, so you can go off and cause some havoc. And of course, when seducing, lots of things turn into assassination battles, and they're pretty good assassins, especially if you give them just bottle of living water is something you could easily make a Slaanesh, I believe, or you should be able to make it using your. I think you can get to it eventually from Water 1, but it may not be easy for you. Anyway, so those are your multi-heroes. Then you have your luck-independent heroes. So in the Warhammer mods, I always make sure that there are heroes that turn up, even if you've got Misfortune 3. They don't care what your luck scale is. It's nothing to do with luck. It's just a random chance each turn of them turning up. We have Steerkar, the Prince of the Swordsveneer. And he is basically a souped-up Chaos Lord. He has extremely fancy armor that I really like, and a very cool hairdo. And he's got his Chaos Glaive, very hard-hitting, very high damage magical weapon. Yeah, high damage and very good stats on it, so it attacks at 19 using this awesome Chaos Glaive. He also has the Steed's Tongue built into his mount. You can replace the Chaos Glaive with items. He's not that wedded to it, it's just his starting item. And of course you can replace the Kite Shield as well. He is just really a pumped up Chaos Lord. He doesn't get the ability to be promoted into a Demon Prince. He will remain at this current position here. But yeah, he is a very strong Chaos Lord. You can definitely do plenty of thugging with him. Very strong single combatant, and he can lead armies quite well. Then we have 2 Demon Princes. Oh, sorry, 1 Demon Prince, 1 Greater Demon. So the Prince of Damnation, Azazel, is a Demon Prince. He has very similar things to the other Demon Princes, except he has Priest level 3, so he can go off and capture thrones and cast Divine Blessing and the like. He has significantly more ore, because his whole thing is that he's like painfully beautiful to look at, and is capable of seducing almost anyone. And of course he does have seduction. And I've said here he is primarily concerned with the corruption and damnation of men, and is considered female for the purposes of the seduction command. So he will go off and seduce men for you. He is obviously a terrifying assassin in a fight with any of the units he fails to seduce, then he will probably obliterate them during the assassination. He has excellent stats. Obviously, he's got this built-in high invulnerability. He's got fantastic stats, fantastic hit points, etc. Basically, a pumped-up demon prince. He's a combat caster. He is Dominion immortal like them with 6 months wait on it if he gets killed in Dominion. But yeah, much higher ore, and then his weaponry is better than the Demon Prince's as well. He has the same Wicked Claw in one of his hands, which is magic, does armor piercing, and so on. He has the Unholy Sword, same as them, but then instead of the Falchion, because he doesn't have a third arm, he has Hypnotize and Enslavement. Hypnotize very useful, firing off first, and can just completely negate the enemy doing anything and let you just go wild on them basically. And then he also has a built-in enslavement attack. It's magic resistance negates, but if you hypnotize an enemy and then enslave them immediately, if you get an enemy commander, they'll just turn into a troop rather than turning into a commander version because it's not charm, it's enslavement. But it's still, a very strong ability to have. Can be very distracting and can be very useful sometimes to pick up some extra troops to help you in battle. Not really something to build up your armies with, but just something to help him when he gets in trouble in combat. So yeah, there's the Prince of Damnation, Azazel. Very nasty indeed. As a Demon Prince, he does not become weaker outside the dominion of his god. Yeah, the Demon Princes don't, but the demons do. So then we have a Greater Demon. So this is basically a pumped up version of the Keeper of Secrets. This is Enkari or Nukari, the Ruination of Ulthuan, because he has many times invaded the Elven Isle of Ulthuan and caused them all kinds of havoc. Yeah, he is a Greater Demon, so he gets weaker outside of Dominion, so these stats are in Dominion, but they will be lower outside of Dominion. And you can see that he is an absolute beast. He's another one with the Unholy Sword. He's got 2 Wicked Claws and then 1 Claw. That's the clawed hand there. There's the 2 Wicked Claws. And yeah, just fantastic and terrifying stats being a Grace Demon. Very high ore built in, very high invulnerability built in, Dominion immortality of 5 months, so he comes back a little quicker than the others. He is stealthy. He has recuperation. He is an assassin and a population killer because he's he loves to just slaughter people. But rather than being one of the greater demons or demon princes that likes to seduce, he is instead one that just likes to kill. He's dedicated to causing pain and havoc rather than seducing and corrupting. He's a combat caster. He's got Air 2, Astral 2, so very mobile. And then he's got Blood 3, so he's got that increased blood, which can be useful for certain blood rituals and things. So you'd be very happy if he turned up as a hero. But these two, in particular, are much less likely to turn up as heroes for you, and they turn up a bit later in the game. They don't turn up very early in the game. I've put some controls on those. If you find that they are turning up too early and being too strong and so on, then let me know in feedback, obviously. And I'll try to tweak these a bit because they are extremely strong, both of them. I mean, they're both capable of teleporting around, and Azazel has wings, so he can just fly around as well. So very mobile, very hard to deal with, very tough, and they're also immortal in their own dominion, although they have quite a long cooldown on that. So that's your heroes and multi-heroes, that's all your commanders, and next I will talk about the national spells, which are mostly summons. What spells does Slaanesh get? Well, we've got a spell in Thaumaturgy and then several different summons in Blood Magic. So let's look at Thaumaturgy first. At level 6, so fairly high research, you get Such Sights to Show You, which is a Event Horizon reference. 2 Astral, 2 Blood to cast. Pretty fatiguing, and it's basically the Charm spell. So identical to the nature spell Charm, though with higher fatigue cost and lower research level, and of course different paths that it takes. So a lot of your mages can cast this. It's got pretty good range. It's pretty good if you are throwing a bunch of these out at an enemy thug or some very strong enemy units. Charm obviously retains their commander status if it gets a commander. So it's better than kind of like an enslaved mind spell in that sense. It is magic resistance negates, doesn't affect mindless beings, and of course it only hits a single target. So it's charm, but you get it earlier. And is it the same school? I think yes, it is. It's just 1 level lower than charm and slightly different fatigue and paths to cast. So moving on to blood magic, let's go through their summons, and each time I show you one of the summon spells, I'll then show you the unit that it summons up. So the first one is Create Chaos Spawn of Slaanesh. Very low level, so you can get it early. 5 blood slaves, and you get a single chaos spawn. So here's the spell, and we'll go and have a look at the chaos spawn now. Here's the preview site showing you all the different chaos spawn. I believe we went through all of these before, but you get one of these chaos spawn at random when you cast the spell. Could be any of them, could be one of the big ones. It's as a troop, obviously, not as a commander. I'll quickly click through these. You can pause on any of them that you want to have a look at. But yeah, 5 blood slaves, you get one of these. And of course they are mindless and undisciplined. But I think pretty good for 5 blood slaves. Early on you could maybe have a mage just dedicated to doing this if you get an early blood economy going, which you certainly can with Slaanesh. Next up at level 2 we have Summon Demonette. So just one Demonette, 4 blood slaves, so a bit cheaper than the Chaos Spawn. Is a Demonette better than a Chaos Spawn? It's certainly better at some things. Here we go, single Demonette, 4 blood slaves. Of course, they are weaker outside of Dominion, so that's the difference. The Chaos Spawn don't get weaker outside of your Dominion, but all of your demons and other summons that we're going to look at do. Here is the Demonette in their preview site. So the Demonette, very nice kind of light infantry troop with excellent stats, very high strength and everything, 2 armor-piercing magical attacks, which is obviously fantastic, 15 armor-piercing damage, very, very nasty. They're slightly glass cannony, they don't have a lot of hit points, although they do have invulnerability 12, that's all the protection it'll really ever get. But if you can put, Army of Gold, Army of Lead, that kind of thing on them, or Iron Warriors, anything to increase their survivability will make them absolutely fantastic, because this is a great weapon, the Wicked Claw. They do come in with built-in ore, so anything that doesn't have very good morale will have difficulty taking them out, but they are vulnerable to, missile fire, crossbow spells, etc. They've only got poison resistance and some cold resistance, nothing else. So they can die off pretty quick, but for 4 blood slaves each, I would say get some of these early on with that low-level spell. Then at level 3 we have the Seeker of Slaanesh, so double the cost of the Demonette, but you get a Demonette mounted on a steed from the realm of Slaanesh. So much that I've said about the Demonette is going to be true of the Seeker as well, but yeah, a bit more expensive, and it does have, so the Demonette is very easy to cast, it's only 1 blood, but the Seeker of Slaanesh much harder to cast, 2 blood and 2 astral. So you'll have to have a slightly more expensive mage summoning those up, but it's still, you could do one of those a month for sure. Here's the Seeker from the preview site. So Seekers, we looked at them a little bit before. They're very similar to Demonettes, but of course being mounted is great because it pushes that defensive skill up. They're very fast, so they can get around the back very, very fast. In fact, combat speed 32. Yeah, recuperation, all that good stuff from being when they're in Dominion. Outside of Dominion, definitely worse. 2 Wicked Claw attacks, so same as the Demonette, but then they also have the Steed's Tongue, which has these nice poisons that it can apply, and it can do a bit of repelling. They also come with an excellent patrol bonus, so getting some Seekers of Slaanesh just for the purposes of patrolling down Unrest, completely feasible. Obviously they don't have any gold upkeeps, they're good for that. Now at level 4 we have 2 more spells. We've got Summon Demonette Troop, so you get multiple Demonettes here in one casting, and it's only 2 blood and 1 astral, so once you've got the ability to cast this, you may want to not be bothering with Summon Demonette, but of course you do have some blood 1 guys that could be summoning that up for you, guys and gals. Summon Demonette Troop is 26 blood slaves, and you get 6 of them. So it's actually less cost efficient. If you remember, they were 4 blood slaves each, so you're paying a premium of 2 extra blood slaves there, just for the benefit of being able to summon multiple Demonettes at once. But 6 Demonettes is a pretty nasty force for 26 blood slaves. You can quickly get quite a few of those going out. Demonette's obviously very nice, we've already looked at those. And then we have the Fiend of Slaanesh. So Fiend of Slaanesh is 13 blood slaves. This might be slightly overcosted to be honest, but you get 13 blood slaves for a single one of them. So it's the equivalent of about 3 Demonettes worth, or 1.5 Seeker of Slaanesh. And you get a single Fiend of Slaanesh. Let's have a look. In the preview site, here is the Fiend of Slaanesh. So Fiend of Slaanesh has 2 Wicked Claws. He has higher strength, or it has higher strength, I should say. I don't think that's got a gender. Has 2 Wicked Claws that are doing higher strength damage. So we've got 17 armor piercing magic damage, very nice indeed. A bit more invulnerability than the Demonette, much higher ore, so very difficult for things that don't have very high morale or aren't mindless, etc. to get blows in on the Fiend of Slaanesh in melee. It still has the problem of being vulnerable to ranged fire and just things that hit everything and ignore kind of attack rolls. It's a really strong patroller, much like the Seeker, but of course the Seeker is less expensive, so probably a better patroller overall for that. And it has the Coma-Inducing Stinger. So the Coma-Inducing Stinger is pretty nasty. It's another armor-piercing attack, although it's not very high damage at all. It's actually a negative damage, so 12 damage armor piercing will still get through quite a bit. And once it does get through, we've got a massive amount of fatigue damage being dealt there, armor negating fatigue damage, the sensation coma. So there is the Fiend of Slaanesh. It is size 3, so you can fit 2 to a square. It is very fast, just like the Seeker. I would say mix these in with your Seekers for doing flank attacks and things. They can take out some very nasty stuff, and they're just extremely offensively potent. But they do cost quite a bit more. The benefit of the Fiend of Slaanesh over the Seeker is that it's tougher. 26 hit points is much nicer, but you still want to be getting some protection on those guys, I think. Moving up one more research level to level 5, we have Contact Herald of Slaanesh. Again, 2 blood and 1 astral. The only one that's been kind of a bit harder to cast so far is the Seeker, 2 blood, 2 astral. But yeah, Herald of Slaanesh. This is a commander summon. You get a commander, and you can either get a male or a female one. It's 50-50 chance, totally at random. For 36 blood slaves, you get a Herald of Slaanesh. So what do you get for 36 blood slaves? Better be good, right? Because that's even more expensive than getting 6 demonettes. So let's have a look what you get. Here is the Herald of Slaanesh. This is the one that's about to transform into either male or female. So it transforms into either male or female form because then you get seduction of males or females, depending on what it's been tasked to seduce by Slaanesh. I've kind of already mentioned this before. But the Herald of Slaanesh gives you a Holy Two Priest, which is a good leader to be leading around, your various demons and things. Good to be leading around groups of chosen because it could bless the chosen. You have built-in very nice ore. You've got built-in very nice invulnerability. You have okay slots. Put a bit of armor on the Herald of Slaanesh, a hat and a body armor, and suddenly it's very, very survivable against mundane things. Doesn't have a lot of natural protection, but against mundane things with armor on, it gets to use the invulnerability at 14 as natural protection, so very, very tough unless they've got magic to hit it with. An excellent assassin, by using seduction, I mean. If you fail the seduction, obviously you get an assassination battle. You can really kill a lot of stuff with that, and it being something you can pump out quite a few with blood slaves, it can be very good for that. I think you can make quite an onerous kind of wave of assassinations and seductions against the enemy. It's a pretty good seducer. It's not. I don't think it shows you the score here, so maybe I should add that to the description. But it's decent at seducing. It's not amazing, and of course you get a spy ability built in. Plenty of hit points and things, very, very nice stats. So it can win in one-on-one combat and assassination things, very nice, but maybe not the best for thugging, depends what your bless is like. At level 6, we get Summon Seeker Pack, so same cost as summoning a single Seeker in terms of paths, 2 blood, 2 astral. Summon Seeker Pack is 44 blood slaves, so if you recall they were 8 blood slaves each. You get 5 of them, so you're paying a premium of 4 slaves for the ease of being able to summon more of them in one go. But of course saves mage time. It's not very exciting to get to that because you could have just been summoning Seekers the whole time, but of course with this being one of the slightly harder ones to cast, maybe you don't want to be spending so much mage time on casting those, so being able to get 5 of them in one go is nice. Having 5 of them in one place gives you a ready-made squad to go and attack flanks, that sort of thing, and Seekers are obviously pretty good for patrolling and the like. We've really looked at those for that. Then we've got 2 more spells. We'll first look at Contact Demon Prince of Slaanesh. So for 99 blood slaves, so quite expensive now, you get a commander. It is 3 blood to cast, 2 astral, but very, very doable to get those paths, not really a problem. Demon Princes of Slaanesh are obviously very good. Here's the description. Let's go and have a look at him. Here's the Demon Prince. So the Demon Prince of Slaanesh, we've already covered a little bit of this before, but good slots, comes with a built-in Wicked Claw, which is very high armor piercing damage, great armor and everything. It doesn't have the problem that the other demons have, the bad protection. Excellent paths for cloud trapezing around and casting various things. Bit vulnerable to magic duels, of course, but then there are only 99 blood slaves, so they're not terribly expensive, really. 99 blood slaves seems like a lot, but once you know what a real big blood economy is like, 99 is not really very expensive at all. You might think of it as being like, I don't know, 25, 30 gems worth once you've got a big blood economy going. Built-in fear, built-in awe, invulnerability, poison resistance, crucially Dominion immortality, although fairly slow to reform at 6 months, and a combat caster. So yeah, the Demon Prince is kind of premium caster. You can do some funky stuff with it and take risks with it because of the Dominion immortality. Obviously, the interesting thing about Demon Prince is even though he's Dominion immortal, outside of his Dominion he loses the immortality, of course, but he doesn't lose anything else. So the Demon Prince is kind of a better option if you want to do lots of raiding and fighting outside of your Dominion, whereas the demons are probably better inside the Dominion. But you can do a lot of cool stuff for the Demon Prince. They're really fun, and obviously they are what you get your Chaos Lord promoted to if you're kind of going down that route. So finally, the top most expensive and kind of centerpiece of the national spells at level 7. So not super high research, lower level research than the Heliophagus, but at the same level as the Bind Archdevil. For 3 blood, 2 astral, contact Keeper of Secrets, you get a commander, of course. It is a Keeper of Secrets. They are 122 blood slaves, so quite expensive, but still not in crazy prices at all. Archdevils are 99, Heliophagus 111, so not really very different from those. And the Keeper of Secrets is very nice. Here's the description. It's saying, you will get either a male or a female, of course, just like with the Herald. Here's the Keeper of Secrets. Really happy with the graphic for this. Very similar to the Demon Prince in terms of kind of slots, abilities, and things. Can't have a helmet, could only have a crown. Extra point of blood magic, but the same astral and air. Extra point of priest, which is of course very nice for going and taking thrones and the like. More invulnerability, higher awe. I believe a pretty strong seducer. You can really go and get some stuff for this, although it might be a bit, the fact that they're kind of a seducer assassin may be less interesting than them as just a mage, combat mage, or a kind of super combatant you can send all over the place. Dominion immortality, and of course they get weaker outside of their dominion because they are true demons, unlike the demon princes. Yeah, so this is your kind of centerpiece demon. I definitely would get several of these and be using them kind of in the late game to do a bunch of stuff. I can't resist having them. I'm really, really have a lot of fun kind of thugging them out and stuff. It may not be the most efficient thing, but at least it is a thug or super combatant or assassin that you're getting for blood slaves, which is a very renewable resource. And you're not hurling tons of gems, which are kind of harder to replace and more useful for doing other globals and things. So you can feel a bit less bad. Also, if it's in Dominion, you've got the Dominion immortality there, 6 months reform times, but still, if you lose them, it's not a totally lost situation, although you would lose the items. So yeah, a bit helpful for people who really enjoy doing thugs and super combatants or single combatants. So that's all of the spells. Let's have a quick look at the pretender selection that you get. Again, not going to go into detail into which of these would be good or anything, just going to show you the pretender selection. So you've got some kind of like otherworldly horror, tentacly horror stuff in King in Yellow, First Ward of the Star, and so on. You've got various female pretenders that you can have for a bit of representation of those. You've got some of the kind of odder looking pretenders from the like Asian and East Asian trees. You've got Netter of Chaos. You've got a kind of nice selection of monsters and titans and things. Actually, good chunk of monsters because there's kind of a snake theme going on there too. And then, the typical stuff, the Golden Idol, Fountain of Blood, all the kind of horrible blood themed or focused ones and things that the barbaric marauders might worship as well. So nice varied selection of pretenders. So what about scales? What scales would I recommend? Again, we're not really talking about a guide here, but things that I think would be thematic. Well, Cold 2, that's your preference. Most people would push that to Cold 3 probably. I would take relatively high Dominion because you get benefit from your Dominion in terms of the mechanic of decreasing the unrest that happens through Dominion strength, and increasing the unrest of your enemies is based on Dominion strength. You've also got a lot of stuff that cares about Dominion, so it's good to be able to like push this around and have a strong Dominion. You don't have sacreds that you'd be getting a huge amount of, so you don't need to like really crank this up to get those. But I would definitely go for those. Obviously, you're going to want to take Turmoil 3 because you have so much chaos recruitment going on. You've also that does like decrease your unrest reduction, but of course you've got your Dominion to decrease unrest as well. Productivity and Sloth, well, this one's actually a bit tricky. You do have some Philosopher Major, so you might be tempted to go Sloth 3, and if you get your blood economy going, obviously you don't care about resources anymore, but if you push to Sloth 3, you may find, particularly in expansion and in the early wars, you don't have the resources to build the units that you want, so definitely do some expansion tests and things to make sure that you don't push this so much that you don't have the units. I might go for some Sloth, but not completely max it out, just to make sure I've got enough to help me with expansion and so on. Would you want to have growth? A lot of people like to have growth if they've got a Blood Nation in particular, and obviously it helps your economy, so you may want to have growth. Luck is always a nice thing to have in synergy with Turmoil, so having luck's nice, and obviously magic can be quite nice as well. You've got relatively research efficient mages. They're not the best in the world for that, but they're relatively research efficient. You can get a bunch of the Slaanesh cultists and use them with magic scale, so you've got the desire to have quite a few strong scales there. So that's kind of everything that I wanted to cover with the nation, but I thought I would just play some turns and then just show you what it looks like when a bunch of units get promoted, just to give you an example of kind of what that looks like in the game and what kind of things you might expect to get from that. So I'm going to take a bunch of Chaos Warriors. I'm just going to go through a few turns and then just show you what happens when they get promoted after kind of an expansion phase. Oh, actually, before I get to that, just thought I'd show you that you've got a nice welcome message on the first turn in the game, which talks to you about your various mechanics. So, of course, we've got the promotion of Chaos Warriors and Knights, the Path of the Warrior, and it explains how that works. And because of a little bit of explanation about the weird thing that I need to do with the home province for technical reasons. You've got the Path of the Champion, which is about your commanders getting promoted, works very slightly differently, and you could eventually become a Demon Prince. And then Dominion of Sensation. Your Dominion has increased importance because of the recruitables locked by minimum levels. Yep, we know about that. Demons are weaker outside your Dominion, of course. And your Dominion decreases unrest provinces you control and increases it if the enemy does, based on its strength. So we knew about that stuff already, but here's a nice message that you can have as a reminder at the start of the game. Now what I'm going to do is take a bunch of Chaos Warriors. I'm going to spend a few turns just building up Chaos Warriors. I'm not going to show you this. I'm just going to go through it in the background and then show you the results of them going around, stomping a bunch of stuff, getting enough experience that they're all kind of a bunch of them getting promoted, and I'll just show you what that looks like. This little army I have has gone through a few battles, and now we can see that the Slaanesh symbol has appeared above one troop and one of the commanders. So Torde Soultaker, the aspiring champion, has got enough experience now that he's gone through his promotion, and he's got this Slaanesh symbol, which means that at the end of the turn he's going to be turned into either a Chaos Spawn or he'll be promoted up into an Exalted Hero. And you can see that one of my troops has done particularly well. This means the rest of them has got pretty decent amounts of experience, but this one here has actually been promoted. This Chaos Warrior of Slaanesh, and has got the Slaanesh symbol hovering above him, which means at the end of the turn he will, if he moves out of his home province being, I don't think it tells me what it's, does it tell me anywhere? I think it's just Slaanesh, but he will then turn into either a Forsaken Chaos Warrior or a Chosen of Slaanesh, or he will be turned into a Chaos Spawn. So we'll see what happens with both of those. We also do get messages telling us that things are promoted, but it doesn't tell you anything more than that. It just tells you where they are and that they were promoted. So we'll send this on to just beat up some more stuff. Let's end the turn and then see what we end up getting. So, unexpected event in Ptarmigan Ridge. Aspiring champion was promoted to Exalted Hero, so he didn't get turned into a Chaos Spawn. Slaanesh was pleased by him. He loses all of his experience and was transformed into an Exalted Hero. That's a totally different event. And we can also see what happened to our unit. So here he is, Torde Soultaker. Still in the Hall of Heroes, and he has turned into a badass Exalted Hero and can continue to get experience and maybe get promoted again, at which point, of course, he will have a chance to turn into a Chaos Lord. So what happened to our troop that got promoted? Our troop that got promoted turned into a Chosen Warrior of Slaanesh, so very nice. Of course, that's how you see where their home province is. This is they're from somewhere. Right, I'm going to just move this stack on for a few more turns, and we'll see if we get some more promotions. So I will cut the recording off while we do that. Very next turn, 13 Chaos Warriors were promoted in Disappointment Cleaver. So remember, they don't get actually to change form this turn. It's going to be next turn they're changing form, at the end of this turn. But you do get the notification they've been promoted, which means they've got the symbol above them. So we've got Jekreth Thrill Scheme, the aspiring champion. He has been promoted and will now turn into either an Exalted Hero or turn into a horrible Chaos Spawn. And then we've got our army. We've got a whole bunch of them here. So I'm just going to separate those out. I'll put them with Gluththrall Scream, the Chaos Lord. So he was a hero that I got randomly. But if I could get him promoted and turned into a Demon Prince, that'd be fantastic. But let's see what happens to these. I'm just going to stay still for this turn and we can see what happens to these 12 Chaos Warriors that got promoted. So end the turn. So in Disappointment Cleaver, we get another Exalted Hero, wasn't turned into a Chaos Spawn. We get some more people promoting Disappointment Cleaver because troops get some passive experience every single turn. But also, what happened to our troops? So, out of the, was it 13, I think? Yeah, I think it was 13. So we've got 9 of them turned into, or maybe it was, yeah, it's not 13 unless one of them just died. It's not 13. It must have been. Oh yeah, it was 12 of them. So 12 of them were Chaos Warriors that were getting promoted, and then we ended up. Excuse me. We ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those 12 turning into Chosen Warriors. Very nice. They lose their experience, of course, and we ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4 of them turning into Forsaken Warriors. Less nice, but still, we do get the armor-piercing Pinceclaw. And then we ended up with 3 of them, so not very many. A quarter of them turned into Chaos Spawn, and we did get some nice Chaos Spawn there. We got the Greater Chaos Spawn, the big size form with a nasty pincer claws and the whip tongue, and we got the really big boy with tons of hit points. So you can see that these are mindless, so cannot be led by in the same squad as the others. You can't mix them in. So they got kicked out in there, so you have to look out for when that happens. You have to look in your garrison and pick them up. But being mindless, they can still be led by this this Chaos Lord. So yeah, they're still mundane. They're not magical or anything like that. You don't require magical leadership to lead them, so anyone could lead them. But they are mindless and undisciplined. So we've got some Chaos Spawn in there, and that's how that works. It can be really exciting getting tons of stuff promoted, and it can be really fun just having some Chaos Spawn that you just appearing, randomly, which you can do some fun stuff with. It can also be really devastating when you're like, oh, my Chaos Lord got promoted, and he got turned into a spawn by Slaanesh because the Chaos Gods are fickle. So that is my overview of Slaanesh, the Servants of Sensation, and I hope that I have whet your appetite for these collection of pervert spawn monsters and just absolute boys, basically. And I hope you give them a go. I will be putting link to the mod in the description, and of course a link to Discord where you can come and talk to me about it, give me feedback and things. Always love to get feedback. I've been getting some really nice positive feedback from people recently saying how much they've enjoyed the mod, and it may not feel like it really means a lot to just be saying to a creator, oh, I really enjoy your content, but it really does. It's really encouraging to me, and I would still make this stuff even if no one cared about it, I think, because I enjoy doing it, but it just makes it the more special for me to make it when people are being so cool about it and saying they enjoy it. It's really nice, so keep doing that, guys. I think that's everything, and I will catch you for my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye now.